Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham. I'm coming to you from Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention. My co-host, Vic is in Washington at the Free Beacon. We are your morning show for any hour. Ton going on. This is the culminating day of the Republican National Convention. Last night was night 3, the introduction of the new VP choice, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. And we're going to get into all that, including Dems in disarray, because the disarray is very intense. But before we get to that, how is it going, Vic?
Hello, Mary Catherine. I'm doing just fine. Apologies to our listeners if I'm not screaming at you like Kimberly Guilfoyle yesterday. I'm just I got a new microphone, so I have to adjust. We have some volume issues, but I'm going to try to talk a little bit more softly. And I'm doing fine. You know, I always try to keep up with the news, and I have a stack of newspapers from the Wall Street Journal every day. I have now resorted to just throwing them into the recycling bin because it's now completely just overtaken by the next day, the next hour. I mean, it's pointless. I saved an article.
In this way, you have caught up with like the year 2012. So that's good.
That's right. You're not going to believe what's going on in 2012.
Yes. And the
oh my gosh. Yes. Did you see that ad with Paul Ryan? They're going to push him over like the old lady down the stairs. Did you see that one? I think that just came out. Anyway, it's not true. It is the third rail. No, but I mean, articles on the 25th Amendment and things like that. And it's, we're just way, or the immunity case.
Yeah.
We're just, and even now the docs case, this is it's just hour by hour. And that's why we've been giving you the content that you want.
We are being overtaken by events this week.
This is why, that's why we're on all the time now for this week. Mary Catherine, how are you? How are things? What's the situation in Milwaukee?
I'm doing pretty good, hanging around, getting my work done, seeing all the journos at the hotel.
Yeah.
I don't know if I will think of some color. I don't know if I have color
do you go up like at the breakfast buffet? Are you like Amy Poehler in Mean Girls when she plays the mom and she says ladies, what's the 411? Do you do that? You go up to the scrub, is that how you get your scoops?
That's how I get my scoops. No, but yesterday I did get down to breakfast late at the buffet and sort of looked forlorn, and a nice hotel employee let me in to have some leftover bacon.
Okay.
I am very convincing, so I can work those connections.
Did you say, do you know who I am? Have you, you don't do that? Because
I just said, thank you very much.
Okay. Do you alter it? Can I ask you a breakfast buffet question? Do you try to alter it since you've been there several days? Like you go light and you go heavy depending, or is it eggs every day? Eggs and bacon every day?
Eggs and bacon every day because protein is key.
It is.
You got to get through several hours. I told you it's catch as catch can around here. I don't know what I'm going to get next. So, and yesterday, because I was sort of I found myself a little famished, and I ended up over at one of the workstations that had a little buffet, and I did have some protein and some vegetables, but there was a dish of potatoes with Parmesan from them. It was so fantastic, and I think I eat like a pound of it because I had just gotten to the point where I needed more food.
Well, yeah, that's also a great source of protein. The potatoes with this cheese.
Yeah, the Parmesan cheese is really.
Right. Have you made it down to the gym, and if so, who's working out?
Oh, yes, I have made it out to the gym. I've gone several times, and these are on-air people. They got to keep it tight. So there's a lot of people down in the gym.
I would say she said that. I didn't say that.
Hey, look, it's just part of the biz. I had a funny moment where I was on the treadmill and I was listening to commentary podcast, as I do often. Mm-hmm. And John Podhoretz starts referencing John King of CNN and a specific segment that he had done on CNN. And I am on the treadmill next to John King as John is talking about him. So, those like odd moments.
Very meta.
There is but one Peloton in the gym, and a lot of folks eyeing that thing, trying to get on it. There's a little bit of a
sign-up sheet. Yeah.
There's a little bit of a line for that thing. I'm over at the barbell station. So Got
Of
to get
course
these,
you are, because
got to
you're
get these
working.
arms
You're
right.
working. Yeah, you got to bulk up. I know you're worrying. You want to
I
get.
was proud of myself the other day. I wore a blazer, but sleeveless. Did you know they have those, Vic? I
No,
found
what is
one.
happening? It sounds like a vest.
It's basically a vest, but it has a very blazer-like
Mhm.
cut with lapels and everything. So I
Did
was
you, by the way, at the gym, did you do deadlifts in front of everybody?
no, because they don't have the whole
Oh, okay.
situation. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
barbells. But
They were not prepared. Yeah.
I did a bunch of Arnold presses and
Good. Yeah, oh, I know the oral press very well. Very well.
yeah. So it's
Good.
it's a good little crew in there. Anyway, should we get to the news?
Let's do it.
You can see the results of my arm workout on TV tonight. I will be on Gutfeld after the speeches,
Oh, goodness.
which reminds me I need to get down there today and do some pumping irons so that you guys can really see that. Oh my goodness. Okay. First, can I say this Republican National Convention is extremely well done.
Yes.
It's effective. It is affecting.
Right.
The timing of the speeches is extremely good. The length of these moments
Yeah.
is extremely good. Keeping people sort of like moving right along through the program. And this was night 3, the last
That's
night.
right. That's what we're
Big
talking about.
the big moment of night 3, of course, is the intro of
Yes.
the vice presidential candidate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Many people have been introduced to him, perhaps unknowingly, through Hillbilly Elegy and the book and the movie based on that book. However, this is his big sort of giant stage political debut. But do we want to talk about that first, or are we going to talk about the rest of the night first? Because I have some thoughts.
Maybe we can do the lead up. I will say really
Yeah.
quickly on JD. That is, I believe, now the #1 best-selling book on Amazon again.
It's also skyrocketed on Netflix, the movie.
The
So
movie, yeah, no, everybody wants to know, and Ron Howard's like, why? Why is this happening to me? So,
I think I think, and again, Trump has such a good sense for this. I think I may have underestimated the extent to which that pop cultural touchstone part of
right,
this is
yeah,
important, because that was, I don't know if I said this on the podcast, that was the book club book of
yeah,
2016.
yeah.
A
No,
lot of people remember it. A lot of people can easily revisit it or watch the movie for the first time to
right,
be introduced to it. That's like it's like hitting the easy button when it comes to introducing a candidate to the world.
right. Yeah, I mean, you and I are focused on interventionist policies, and he's
Yes.
thinking about, oh, that was a good movie, that was a good book. I will say the RNC's schedule, like you say, very impressive. They run a tight ship. I'd say there was 2 things. One was Peter Navarro. He had just come out of
Yeah.
jail for contempt for refusing to go before Congress. He went over, and that pushed everything late last
Yeah.
night. And I'm sure that drove the schedulers nuts. And the second thing is, I don't know if you caught this. I rewound it to make sure. The other RNC, the co-chair, Mr. Watley, yes, Mr. Watley, he was giving a speech at the end of the night. He's tired. I get it. And the word success is a tricky word. And I've seen people flub it at graduation ceremonies. And he did it. He wanted to say, and he ended up saying that Donald Trump, the president, quote, gave up a successful business career, but he first says he gave up sex, and then he said a successful business career.
I don't think he gave that up.
No, another lie, Mary Catherine, just more lies about our president.
Daniel Dale's on CNN fact checking that.
But did he give it up? Okay. What were your impressions of last night?
Okay. So we will get to the big event, but let's start with some of the run up, because I think what's impressive about this convention, and I'm not wont to be impressed by conventions. I'm a bit cynical.
Cheesy.
I'm a bit cynical about them. I
Yeah.
can't get to the moment where we're all cheerleading, A, because I
Right.
just don't like politicians that much.
Right.
And B, because like this is all a show, and I'm very aware of that. But what's remarkable to me is I think by their use of everyday Americans to give speeches, and those Americans being incredibly skillful at it, by the way, just knocking it out of the park in the venue,
Right.
and sometimes being so good that they're sort of overtaking the story of the later political stars.
Right.
That is a remarkable feat. And in this case,
Yeah.
I think I got to the floor, and I wish I'd been there earlier. I was on a set that was right next to the floor, so I had a nice spot.
Oh, good.
I got to the floor just as the Battle of the Bulge veteran is
Oh,
speaking.
that guy is great.
Now
Yes.
he's in his late 90s. I believe his name is William Pekrul.
Yep. Bill Pekrul,
Uh,
98.
yeah, 98 years old. Sounded and looked amazing, by the way. Looked
Yes. He
ridiculously
did
good.
not he did not look a day over 80, and I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, really.
No, it's serious. He did not go to the same med spa as Matt Gaetz. He
Who's somebody compared to the villain? Was his name Robbie? What's his name from Lazy Town? Oh, I think it was our friend Adele Scalia. She did that. So bad. How dare
so
you, Adele?
I know, it's too much. Don't go after people's things. Okay. Anyway, he did a fantastic job. Just the whole room was with him. His face when people were standing cheering for him and he was sort of taking it in was beatific. It was
Oh, yeah.
so it was just wonderful. It was wonderful to be in the room for it. And
Right.
everybody was just there is this feeling of positivity that is a bit it's beyond what even a normal we feel good about this election
Yes.
convention would feel like, and I think it is because it is animated by what happened Saturday. And he we'll play a clip of him because
Yeah.
he's fantastic. Volunteering, in fact, to enlist again.
God.
Here he is.
There aren't many of us left today. But for us, those of us who are here, that America is still worth fighting for.
All right.
So when he came on stage, and I was watching with my son, and so here comes this veteran, and I look at it. We were actually watching, I think, on C-SPAN at that point, because then you get the full program, and it said World War II veteran. I go, what? And I said, let's assume he was like, I don't know, 18 in 1945. I said, what is he, like 98, 97, 98? And he was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, really impressive, along with the families of the fallen. I'm sure I mean, you were there for all that. I mean, it's well done. They didn't treat the non-political stars and politicians like, the daytime Oscars, when they have
Right,
the other
right.
ceremony earlier today,
Exactly.
and then, you only see the highlights. They're there sometimes in prime time. And the case in point was the fella, by the way, who, when Donald Trump first made his appearance at the arena, it was right before this just, normal guy was coming up to speak. And
Right.
I mean, he looked obviously sort of, nervous and kind of terrified about the fact that all of a sudden he's supposed to give the speech, and here's Donald Trump, and he delivered it and he was fine. Everybody was great. And I mean, it goes to show you that it's not just, don't assume that the politicians are the better speakers.
Well,
I
and
mean,
also it goes to a theme that we have on this show, which is we don't have so much a regular people problem as an elite problem,
yes,
right?
that's right. That's right. That's
It's
really drives it home.
and that theme goes throughout American society these days. Before one of the reasons that people were so primed to be with Peckerell when he took the stage, not that they wouldn't have been otherwise, but it had been extremely emotional right before
Yep.
that. I wish I had been on the floor for this, but I got stuck in a sort of a funnel and
Mhm.
or bottleneck and couldn't get down there in time. A really important thing happened. And to me, more important even than Vance's speech, which is that the families of the 13 service members who died at
Wow.
Abbey Gate.
Yeah.
Now, not I don't think all of them were there, but a nice handful of
Yep.
folks were there, got a moment to honor their loved ones in front of the entire nation.
That's right.
Now, they should have had this moment at a State of the Union or at a gathering in the Rose Garden. They should have been invited by the commander in chief
Mhm.
to acknowledge the deaths of their loved ones, and that has never happened.
Does Biden, do you think he actually forgot that they died? Because, as
Well,
you know, that was the big thing in the debate when he says, no service member has died on my watch. I'm like, and we were like, are you kidding? And they're not going to get that, along with, chance of free the hostages. I mean, you're in for a real treat, Mary Catherine, in Chicago.
I mean, yeah, that was the other thing. Oh, I haven't even gotten to the family of one of the American hostages held in
Oh,
Gaza
yeah,
where
that's right.
yeah. So this moment was so powerful, and Herman and Alicia Lopez, who are the parents of the 22-year-old Hunter Lopez, a corporal who was killed at Abbey Gate, they just said, "Look, Biden has never said their names. So we're here tonight to say their names."
Wow.
And they did so. And then in an astonishing moment, which even folks on other networks acknowledged was one of the most amazing things they've ever seen at a convention, the audience spontaneously started repeating the names back
Wow.
as he was
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
Every shot while that is happening is people crying. Every single shot. And I just think it's so important for those families to have that. And yes, this is a political venue, but it didn't have to be, right? They're given
Right.
this venue because they didn't get the traditional
That's it.
venue.
Yeah.
And so I am so glad for them. I believe her name is Christy Shamblin, who is the mother-in-law of Nicole Gee, which is a Marine who died that day as well. She got to speak and she said that, look, Biden is not interested in talking to them, but that Trump spent 6 hours with her family
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
carried some of that grief with her.
He knows their names.
It is so reprehensible that Biden does not acknowledge these people. And I don't know
Because
if
it
you
makes them look
remember,
bad. Yeah.
I know, and I don't know if you remember this, Vic, but actually, first we should play a clip of this moment with the Lopez's reading these names. It's gonna take about 2.5 minutes, but I think it is well worth it to think about them, send our prayers to their families, and to just take this in for a bit.
When Hunter and the other service members' bodies were returned to the U.S. in Dover, Delaware, Joe Biden met the plane. But he made the occasion more about his son, lost to cancer, than our sons and daughters, lost on his watch. Worse than that, he has never said their names out loud. And during last month's debate, he claimed no service members have died during his administration. None. That hurt us all deeply. So Alicia and I are here to say the names of all 13 service members who lost their lives all 13 service members who lost their lives at Abbey Gate. David Espinoza. Nicole G. Taylor Hoover. Ryan C. Knaus. Riley McCollum. Dylan Marola. Kareem Nakui. Dagan Page. Johanny Pichardo. Humberto Sanchez. Jared Schmitz. Maxton Soviak. And my son, Hunter Lopez.
Someone pushed back on me on Twitter last night, commending the RNC for doing this and said, "Oh, Trump never invited Gold Star families to the State of the Union." I said, actually, he did. He invited a Navy SEAL widow to the State of the Union in 2017, and that was a death that happened on his watch
Right.
that he could have easily ignored. And do you know what the response to that was?
I'm so scared.
In the moment when she stood up, it was the most powerful moment of his State of
Uh-huh.
the Union when he honored her and her husband's sacrifice and her family's sacrifice. People took to Twitter, many of them media figures, to say that she was a prop and that she was being used
Mhm.
by the commander in chief to sort of cleanse himself of his responsibility. So there's no winning, right?
No, 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 you're
Biden,
damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Biden's allowed to completely ignore those who give their all for the United States of America in uniform. And if Trump acknowledges them, that's somehow a problem.
Right.
I just think Biden's behavior, particularly on this, is so, so, so very bad. And the fact that he talks to these folks when he talks to them at the dignified transfer at Dover, for instance, only about his son, wild.
I know we could talk about this later, but while we're just briefly on the topic of Biden, it's amazing how many people are pushing for, and we talked about this on a previous episode, that if he steps down now, we'll always remember him for this amazing legacy, this most amazing presidency, and all the amazing things he has done in his 4 years. And I'm like, wasn't that why he was losing it to begin with? Because of a
Yes.
really bad record on, I don't know, immigration, Afghanistan, inflation, and somehow now that's being rewritten as, it's if not for him being down on the polls and his mental acuity, greatest president ever.
Well, it's being written as incentive for him to leave, but we'll get
We'll
to
get
that.
to that.
But yeah, I just think, president empathy, president
Yeah.
normalcy, none of those things were real.
Right.
And particularly at this point, I as you note, I'm not sure he even knows that these people died
Right
in
at
the
this
service of
point.
their country.
Right.
He said at a debate, that seems like a large fact check, by the way. That one should be the PolitiFact lie of the year. Don't
That's right.
count on it, folks. So anyway, that one is personally important to me that those folks got their moment. Should we talk about the Israeli Gaza hostage moment too, which is,
Sure.
I think, an interesting contrast to what you will probably see at the DNC, which is
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
no
No.
talk of this at all, and certainly not an entire arena chanting "Bring them home."
No, I mean, unless they really, really, really want to lose Michigan badly. That's how they're thinking. I'm not saying that's
Yeah.
it'll cause it, but in their minds, that's what they're thinking. They
We
have a
should play.
whole
We should
Michigan
play a little.
delegation.
We should play a little clip of that just so you can get a feel for this in the
Yeah.
audience. It was a very moving night.
Omer, we love you. We won't stop fighting for you.
Say it with us. Bring them home. Bring them home. Bring them home. Thank you, everybody. God bless Israel and God bless America.
Yeah, again, it'll be very interesting to see what happens in Chicago. People will be talking about the situation in the Middle East on the outside. On the streets, they'll be definitely making their opinions known. So, I mean, there is that, but chance of bringing the hostages home, again, the Democrats are in a really bad spot. I mean, they have a very powerful, it might not be a lot, but it's a very loud contingency, obviously, the squad, and people who feel very strongly about about Israel, and not in a good way. So
By the way, another group of Americans whose names Biden never says.
we have American hostages,
It's wild.
and we're just sort of shrugging. It's like, really? So did you
He's so very
Yeah.
busy at the beach.
He is. Well, now he's, again, we'll talk about this later, but he's got to isolate, as you know. We'll talk about that later. He's got to isolate at the beach. Before we get to the big speeches, or I don't know, maybe this counts as a big speech. Let's see. We had Kai Trump.
Oh,
Right,
she did
so-
a lovely job.
She did. She was great. And I'm always sort of skeptical when, people want to bring up their kids to do the talking and see how they handle things, but it was pretty well written, and I thought she was very sweet.
I thought she struck a very
Great.
nice tone. She of course talked about her, and this has been a theme of the whole convention, is an invitation to see Donald Trump as something other than his media persona.
Right.
And to say, hey, there's this person that you maybe haven't considered, that you haven't
Right.
gotten exposure to, and that is different. And she's introducing that part of him.
Yeah.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders did the same thing. Everyone talks about him as a father and a grandfather. much more than I remember at certainly the
Yeah.
2016 convention, although it was part of it. And I also thought she razzed him a little bit too, which I enjoyed. There has been light teasing of him
Yeah,
in
I think that
several
works.
speeches, and it's the kind of thing that you would think, is he going to be okay with this? And he seemed to receive it well every single time.
Yeah,
She
I
said
mean
something. I enjoyed her line where she said something about the two of them competing, and
oh
she
yeah,
said,
talking about the golf game.
and so she said,
And
sometimes he forgets I'm a Trump too.
oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, and I do, in case we forget, you were there on the floor. That Nashville band is something else. Six Wire.
They're good.
How much does it cost to get them to do a wedding? Too much now. They're beyond weddings now. But I'm
Yeah,
like,
I think
wow.
so. They are very
There's nothing wrong with cover bands, man, and it just takes care of all your problems. And somebody had put on Twitter a flashback to the Singing Senators,
Oh,
from
yes.
the '96 convention, and it's Trent Lott and Larry Craig and Jim
Larry
Jefferson,
Craig.
and they're singing Elvira. And if you listen to the background, it's this really cheesy keyboard that's
Right.
accompanying them. Just give me the band. And so props to Six Wire, man.
By the way, do you know that I own a Singing Senators CD?
What? Oh, I don't. I should say John Ashcroft too. You
Yeah.
too.
I
Wow.
don't know. I honestly don't know how I came to have it,
Mhm.
but at some point someone handed me a CD in the probably the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and it's in my CD case that I, don't ever revisit at this
I,
point.
I I think our listeners deserve to hear a little bit of that. I don't know.
Yeah, we should do a
Great,
flashback.
do a little-
Okay,
we'll go
Singing
back.
Senators, here you go.
Elvira, my heart's on fire. Elvira, yeah. She got eyes that look like diamonds. Woo! Lips like cherry wine. Yes. That girl, sure enough, makes my little heart shine. Go ahead, John. I get a funny feeling up and down my spine. 'Cause I know that my Elvira's mine. Yeah.
All right, so then we have Donald Trump Jr. following his daughter, and frankly, she upstaged him a little bit.
Yeah.
She was so cute.
Every time I see Donnie Jr., I keep on thinking of the character Ellis from Die Hard. And he's,
Look,
Hans,
let me say,
Booby. Wait, what are you,
let
a
me-
method actor?
let me say about Don Jr. that, and my opinion on his speechifying has not changed since 2016.
Sure.
He gives a good, competent,
Yeah.
normal political speech. He did it in 2016, sort of somewhat to my relief when I watched him take the stage. He gave this speech that was like, oh, that's like a normal dude, like a normal
Right.
political figure.
Yeah.
And I think he did the same last night. It was quite good. And then he hands it over. Next on the list is
Oh yeah.
Usha Vance to introduce her husband.
Mhm.
And man, I'm gonna be a big Usha booster, guys. I'm
Go
gonna be
for it.
I'm an Usha partisan. Just everybody get ready for it. She is accomplished. She's very beautiful. But she's like those things, and also she came out on stage and just looked like a normal person.
She did. I was nervous because the hair was hanging down and covering her eye. And then I think, well, she must figure it out, obviously. Then she just fixed it.
And by the way, that is a signifier that as soon as I saw it, I was like, she would be sprayed to within an inch of her life
Mhm.
if she weren't a normal person, right?
Right.
That's one of the things actually in TV that I struggle with because I don't like to be sprayed and sculpted to within.
Oh, right.
Like I want my hair to look like hair, and
Yeah.
sometimes that's a struggle on a TV set.
Well, I
So-
will, for example, I remember and God bless her, but I do remember in 1996 at the San Diego convention, Liddy Dole taking the floor. And that hair is just a little bit of spray there. That was ozone. That was ozone, at its best. And Usha, and it's just a very different speech, obviously. And she came out there and she was real. That's what I liked about it. It's not, I mean, all this, there's not a lot of the pizzazz and flair, and I'm sure she was nervous. Who wouldn't be? But she came off to me as being very sincere.
For people being introduced to them, a lovely couple. That's what you want. when you're starting this journey. And then we
This
get
was not
to
a political arrangement, you know?
no, clearly. If anything, you could tell she's looking around like, how did I get here?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
So that's interesting. She's also obviously the daughter of Indian immigrants
Yeah.
to this country. That is an interesting part of this because, of course, the portrayal of Vance will be as this avatar of like white working class anger
Mhm.
that is sort of afraid and xenophobic and
Right.
racist. And yet, his children, one of whom is named Vivek, are
That was a
biracial
little
children, right?
that was confusing because I think, not really paying attention on and I was looking at my phone, and then I hear him mentioning Vivek, and I'm like, "What? He's there? What? Oh, wait. Oh, it's not. Sorry."
Yet more evidence that we're living in a simulation. So then let's get to the actual speech. Do you want to do the speech craft of it, and then we'll do the politics?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you haven't heard him speak before, and you might have had this idea of what or how he was going to deliver, because you hear about the things that he says, yes, and in when you're in Congress, it's a different setting. He's not one to raise the roof. He was not Vivek Ramaswamy. You want to compare apples and oranges? I mean, goodness, very different. He's no Hung Kao. Hung Kao was amazing, and he really can, he's got a lot of fire and power to get everybody, riled up. But he gets the job done. The content was good, and honestly, I find him to be a nice counterbalance to Trump, or at least Trump 1.0, because we don't know how Trump is going to be tonight. But certainly, you need that balance, and so again, I just. You look at him and you listen to his story, and what's remarkable is it's not fake. No one's going to be digging in to find out. Like when I was in college, we all had to read this book about Rigoberto Menchú.
Oh,
and about,
Rigoberto
remember
Menchú, yes.
right? And it turns out she was making stuff up. So this is real. And
Well, yeah, that's another
his mother
interesting.
was there. His mother was there, and they were talking about his grandmother. It's win or lose. It's the American dream.
And I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here. 10 years, clean and sober. I love you, Mom.
A counterfactual that's interesting is if he were not introduced via this best-selling book that was a darling of all
Right.
sort of liberal elite academia and media, the very things that they applauded in the book would be the things that they used to slime him.
Yeah.
The fact that he had a mother with addiction problems, the fact that he had a mama with many, many guns in her home
Yes.
would be uncovered and
Oh,
put before the American people as strikes against him. So he's in an interesting way,
that's right.
very pre-vetted when it comes to his personal life because it's all out there. So I think that's interesting. I thought, look,
You could predict, by the way, just really quickly before I forget, you could totally, as you were saying about this and how the media would capture this, you could totally picture the headline, which would be JD Vance is tough on drugs. His mother was a druggie. It's
right? Yes.
okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
it's true, and it would be bad and wrong, right? But that's what politics is. Anyway, I thought the speech was effective, not a legendary speech in the model of Barack Obama, or even, by the way, and some people might forget, Sarah Palin, whose
Oh, boy.
introductory speech at the
Yes.
RNC
Oh.
was enough to scare liberals quite a bit. Now, obviously, that story took a turn, but her initial introduction to the American people was quite electrifying. I would not say that this was electrifying, but it was competent. He has a story to tell. He leaned hard into personally connecting with people who have lived similar lives in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt. I thought the moment where he referenced getting a call and talking to a friend and hearing about a friend from high school who died of an overdose was poignant and frankly a call and a conversation that most people of my generation have had at this point in our lives because it's pretty rampant.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah. So I think
It's something.
those moments were interesting. I think he's a pretty nimble speaker because he starts sort of joking with the crowd at times. I'm interested in what you think. there was a lot of crowd interaction, sometimes a little too much.
Yes.
And I wonder from the TV if it played less well than obviously the crowd loved it inside.
Right.
But I think to the TV it might have seemed a little slow, like he was getting held up by the crowd.
Right, because, we don't have the same the volume is gonna be different from what you're hearing from JD from the stage, from the podium, and what's going on. And there are moments where I would look up and think, "Oh, was there a disruption? Or was there somebody trying to interrupt, the speech in a bad way?" And it
Right.
turned out there were bad actors in that crowd. They were from Michigan.
No, so I thought it was very deft how he did that,
Yeah.
where, they start doing the Ohio cheer.
Right.
This will work better on the trail than in the room
Yes.
and on TV.
Yes.
But they start doing the Ohio cheer, and he says, "Okay, enough, we have to reach Michigan as well," right?
Right.
And then at another point, the Michigan and Ohio folks start going after each other in the
Yeah.
room, and he says, "Okay, we've had enough political violence," right? Those are good instincts. So I thought effective. Now,
It really is amazing about those 2 states, and how much and I've had that experience having been to Michigan and even talking to, like, folks in, like, Indiana at Notre Dame, which, Notre Dame likes to be a part of that mix as well.
right. Sure,
But
guys.
I know. But, people have very strong feelings. So,
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was effective. I would have cut 10 to 12 minutes off of it. I
sure.
think your reviews would be better if you did so. There were a lot of ideas in it. One thing, now we can get to the policy, and this is how we can segue to that.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I did one more. I think this relationship between him and his wife is so natural and good. And at one point, he ad-libbed a line because I had the text of the speech. He
Okay.
ad-libbed a line. We can play it for you guys, where he's talking about what he brought to the relationship when he came.
Oh,
And then he said the part about his debt and the cemetery plot were in the speech. The second part was not. Here he is.
Now, when I proposed to my wife, we were in law school, and I said, "Honey, I come with $120,000 worth of law school debt and a cemetery plot on a mountainside in eastern Kentucky." And I guess standing here tonight, it's just gotten weirder and weirder, honey.
Again, just good instincts.
yeah.
He
Amazing.
he understood the room, but different than a Trump speech, where Trump, I think, understands that this guy's not going to be the fiery speaker who takes any wind out of his sails, right?
Yeah.
Okay, should we talk about the policy part of this? And I can segue to
Sure.
that by saying there were a couple of moments that I thought were sort of sly, where he says, "We want to be a party where we have open debate,
Yeah.
a free exchange of ideas." For me, a free speech enthusiast, this is a great way to frame it. But what it actually is declaring victory over part of the
Yeah.
party that he disagrees with on
Mhm.
trade and foreign policy, because
That's right. The old wing.
he's saying, "Hey, like, we can keep talking, guys. Like, feel free to debate, but I'm the guy on the stage.
Yeah.
I'm the guy on the stage."
Tariffs are back.
Yeah. So on that front, this speech really very much sounded policy-wise like a 2004 Democrats speech in
That's
some
an interesting comparison.
in some pretty
Yeah.
serious ways. And it ain't my cup of tea, but that also doesn't mean it's not appealing to plenty of people.
Right. I mean, again, it's the kind of appeal, certainly in that convention hall, that is definitely going to work, and maybe a growing segment of the Republican Party across the country. There's a reason why, many reasons why, Trump picked Vance beyond the single syllable, attraction of those of the posters. You'll see that it's just easy to see. It's easy on the eyes. Obviously, Trump is taking the Republican Party in this different direction.
Right.
There's nobody from the old guard here on this ticket, right? There's nobody that's going to be connected to Iraq, for example, except for, JD, because he was in the
Except that
Marines.
he's literally connected to
Yeah,
Iraq.
he is.
And
That's
that
right.
is an interesting part of this, right? Because he's
That gives him cred.
hard to assail on this point. What I thought was a weak
Yeah, he
part
was
of
there.
this, what I thought was a weak part of the speech. Look, I am a person who's traveled a similar road to him on foreign policy to some extent.
Right.
I started out hawkish, and now I'm hawkish-ish, right?
Yeah.
I haven't gone as far as Vance, but I do think having very clear objectives, knowing exactly what we're doing, being ready to win wars that we put boots on the ground
That's
for,
right.
as Obama and Biden very clearly were not willing
Right.
to do. All of those things are really important. And I think that acknowledging the pain, particularly that many communities who have lots of service members
Yeah.
experienced during the 20-year run of those two wars in global terrorism,
Yeah.
acknowledging that pain is very important.
Right.
And there are plenty of families in that mix who go, I signed up to serve, but man, like what happened here?
Right.
Particularly
Yeah.
now that Obama got out of Iraq on a political timeline, and then Biden
Right.
got out of Afghanistan on a political timeline, and to degrees of disaster on both fronts, not as much in Iraq as Afghanistan. But, that doesn't mean that there were no mistakes made before that. But I understand families and a generation of Americans being very skeptical after all of that. What I thought he didn't do well was use his own experience and the experience of his fellow Marines and soldiers to illustrate that. He just called
Talk
it
more about it.
disastrous and moved on. And I
Right.
think he has a real opportunity to humanize that
Right.
and to explain how he got here. So I didn't love that, because a lot of people I know who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan fought for an idea,
Yeah.
and he says people don't fight for ideas. I think that's just factually incorrect, but it's a nationalism sort of talking point, right?
Yeah.
And I think it does not comport with what I know from families who have been through some of the pain that he went through and that other, that generation went through. Anyway,
Right. No, I mean, the counter argument, of course, is that, what we wanted to do was right. What the Bush, Cheney years, what they wanted to do was right, and just how it was done was not done well, obviously. And
well, and then once
a
you've
lot of people
bought
died,
all
so
that, then once you've like achieved things with treasure and blood, to have it
Mhm.
abandoned by other
Well, that's the thing.
administrations on it's just it's very
So what's the
dispiriting.
point? And either,
The whole
you're
thing's dispiriting.
right. You got, again, you got to be in it to win it, or, as Colin Powell says, you break it, you buy it. I mean, but now we're going way back. So yeah, I would have liked to, get a little more into that. On the other hand, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he mentioned Ukraine by name, or at least in a policy sense.
He didn't, and a lot of
Yeah.
people find that encouraging.
Yeah.
Leaves him open to having some briefings that might change his mind about
Right.
that. He also has over the years been pretty clear about Israel, distinguished from some of his other
Sure.
foreign policy views. Look, the free market party that I used to wish for, long gone, Vic. And it's not, you know what? It's not that they even believed it anyway, right? It's not like there were a ton of free marketeers and libertarian leaning economic minds in the Republican Party enacting such policies. But I feel like we're really given two statist options of parties at this point. And that's depressing to me, because I do not think it will help the people that JD Vance wants to help.
Yeah. I do wonder what happens to the free traders. the people who, are our friends who have been pushing this for a very long time. But again, Trump has basically severed that connection with the old Republican Guard and their views, and certainly neocons for that matter, who are definitely not welcome. But I do wonder, for example, if, Tom Cotton, if there's a place for him in a Trump
Right.
administration, so I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But
I just like, tariffs are going to hurt people. Tariffs are going to hurt
Yeah.
people.
yeah, there's always a blowback to that.
Insisting that everything must be stamped made in America
Mhm.
will hurt people and their buying power. And I would love, because he's a very smart guy, I would love for him to acknowledge that elites and government have indeed hurt a bunch of people in these communities, and promises have been made that have not been kept. And the economics did not work out for people the way
Right.
that they were sold. And also, here are some ways that we can, I don't know, cut the number of government's responsibilities and their overbearing nature and the regulation in every sector of our lives to help tame some of that.
Right.
I would love to see that as part of the solution, because I think Trump's on board for that. And it would make my libertarianish heart sing to hear a little more on that front. Ideological conservatives like me of the old
Yeah.
type are not the pitch for this speech. And I will note, in my Normie Mom focus group, which is just my group text of friends of not
Sure.
very political,
Right.
centrist to center
Real
right,
Americans,
to
as we
left
say.
Americans, suburban moms. the reaction to Vance was, hey, a little skeptical of his change of heart, but impressive and likable.
Okay.
Another one said, I watched the movie on his life today, which made me like him, of course.
Is it now number 1 on Netflix?
It's
Probably.
soaring. And number 3, good job, witty. So those reviews are good from
And again,
folks who are just sort of mildly tuning in.
And that's fine because, we're talking about a vice president, and traditionally voters don't vote for vice presidents anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to vote for presidents. 2 days on the agenda for the last day, of course, before Trump speaks. I believe it's foreign policy. So we may hear more about America's role in the world.
By the way, we have
I'd
taken
like
up
to.
most of our time talking about the RNC, and we need to briefly talk
Oh
about
my goodness.
the insanity. First, I will
Yeah.
note that on the JD Vance front, I'll play you one insane clip of this is, and I knew this was coming. Alex Wagner saying that talking about the family cemetery plot is white nationalism. So let's do the
Wow.
very sophisticated critiques here. Here we go.
I know that there was not the same red meat sort of blood and soil nationalism that you might hear in, I don't know, other parallel universe Republican conventions. But I do think there were some sort of Easter eggs of white nationalism in the speech. One of the things that stuck out to me was when he started talking about what America is. He said, America is not just an idea. It is a group of people with a shared history and a common future. The thing about America is that it's not a group of people with shared history. In fact, I think a lot of people would argue it's quite the opposite. It's a lot of people with different histories, different heritages.
His in-laws don't share the history.
Exactly, and that's the other piece of it. He goes on, he went a long sort of a paragraph at least about this plot in eastern Kentucky where his 6 generations of his family are buried. And his hope is that his wife and he are eventually laid to rest there and their kids follow them. And I sort of understand the idea of sharing the burial plot, but it also it reveals someone who believes that the history that the family should inherit, and indeed the history that should be determinative in the story of the Vance family, is the history of the Eastern Kentucky Vances, and not the Vances from San Diego, which is where his wife is from and where her Indian parents are from. But in America, it doesn't always have to be the white male lineage that trumps that defines the family history, that branch of the tree supersedes all else. And I just think the construction of this notion reveals a lot about someone who fundamentally believes in the supremacy of whiteness and masculinity. And it's couched in a sort of halcyon, revisitation of his roots, but it is actually really revealing about what he thinks matters and who America is. And that America is a place for people with a shared Western background. And that is the idea of America. That is the nation of America that he wants to resurrect.
Rachel Maddow also said that his references to Lord of the Rings in his life, he named one of his businesses after a Lord of the Rings reference, is a signal of alt-right.
Yeah, that was J.R.R. Tolkien. He was very alt-right, as you know. Tolkien was very alt-right. I will say this, at the end of this speech, I thought it was quite ironic that the song that Six Wire played was Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow, which was, of course, the Clinton-Gore song to finally bring an end to the Reagan-Bush years and Bush Quayle. And they are thinking that. And so here we are again.
As I said, he did sound like sort of an old school Democrat. Also,
it is weird where JD would have been back in 1992,
right.
JD now versus JD back in 2015.
He also entered to a Merle Haggard protest song of sorts called America First. Did you catch that?
No, I did not catch that. There you go.
Yes. So he's flanked by songs that mean something. And again, a signal that they're thinking through this campaign and the way that they are presenting things. And I don't know if it's Susie Wiles or Chris Lasavita or if it's a maybe slightly new Trump from a month ago.
Yeah.
But it's working in the moment. Meanwhile, let's go briefly for just a few minutes about what's going on the Democratic side. I have a clip of Jeff Zeleny explaining that on CNN that Biden might be getting more receptive to stepping out.
And talking to a senior Democratic advisor tonight who is telling me this. He said he believes the president is being, quote, more receptive to these calls of concern. He goes on to say this: the private conversations with the Hill are continuing, this advisor tells me. He's being receptive, not as defiant as he is publicly. Goes on to saying, talking about Vice President Kamala Harris, who initially he wondered how she may fare in a campaign should it come to that. I'm told now he's asking questions, saying, do you think Kamala can win? Again, this advisor offers caution, saying this: it is still unclear where he's going to land, but he seems to be listening. So, Jake, what we do know, this is a new moment for President Biden. Tomorrow marks 3 weeks since the debate in Atlanta, as you well know. He's heard so much concern from across the Democratic Party. Time is running short. The Democratic National Committee was thinking about starting their nomination process next week. That is now on hold. That will not begin until August 1st. So there is a bit of time for the president to make his decision. But hanging over all of this is the same thing as it's been for the last 3 weeks. If not him, who? But tonight, as the president flies back to the East Coast from Las Vegas, it is certainly a new moment for him and his potential candidacy, Jake.
Yeah, look, he continues to go out there and try to perform extremely badly.
Yeah, he had that interview on BET, and he forgot the name of Lloyd Austin, his Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, we should probably play that too.
Let's just play the clip. Let's just play the clip. And
you have to cringe with us. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And so it's all about treating people with dignity. And it's about making sure that, look, I mean, for example, look at the heat I'm getting because I named the Secretary of Defense, a black man. I named Ketanji Brown. I mean, because of the people I've named.
Ooh.
So that's a real twofer, by the way, because not only did he say the black man, but then he says Ketanji Brown Jackson. So you're misgendering, and it's just the generic. And unfortunately, if you watch the video, you cannot see the face of the host, but I can only imagine what that host must be thinking and what, his expression. When we thought after Saturday's horrific events, you and I were like, well, that's it. They're backing off. They're not going to take Biden down now. They don't have the stomach for this because what happened was just so terrible. And this is the last thing the Democrats need, is to have this sort of turmoil. No, the news moves so fast that how long has it been? 1-2 days? Okay, yeah, let's have the intervention talk again. And let's get more people. We're now up to 20 members of Congress.
And stuff from Pelosi is leaking. We should note Ruthless Podcast reported first that Schumer had this meeting with Biden attempting to get him to step down. And by the way, all the mainstream media outlets took that scoop and pretended it was theirs.
It's amazing that didn't give them credit. A lot of them.
They don't like that right-leaning podcast got that.
No, sure drives them nuts.
So that happened. Pelosi is now leaking. They're all leaking that they're trying to get him out. It's not generally Pelosi's style to let a lot of this leak. So I think this is desperation because he is holding his ground.
Well,
I don't know how much longer he can last doing that. They now announced that he has COVID. He's going to be gone for a couple of days. Let me offer for the Democratic Party a different version of events for this week that could have happened. The RNC is going on. He stays at the White House. He keeps his mouth shut. And the only thing he does is give one solid Oval Office address about the assassination attempt.
That's right.
For 7 minutes, and then asks for the resignation of Kimberly Cheadle, the head of the Secret Service. If he had done that, he would have
Biden plus 3.
He would have had a good week.
Yeah, that's right. And they're still citing polls, by the way, that show Biden, neck and neck. And the story about Pelosi is that she wanted to get Donnellan, who is Biden's advisor, on the line and provide more data about more polling data to show him, because they think that that Biden's advisors and family are hiding bad numbers from Biden. And Biden still has the wherewithal to say, hey, I want to stay in this race. Again, this is not like in the movie Dave. He's not incapacitated in that sense.
No, he's not.
So they, again, nothing short of a palace coup. But who's been visiting? Hakeem Jeffries sent a note to him, and then of course Schumer came over.
Well, and
the
the other
weekend
thing is, every
to
time
give him a talk.
Every time you try to coup him, you make him madder.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which makes his public appearances worse.
What's he supposed to say now, too? By the way, if he decides to bow out, and all sorts of folks in the media are saying that he's doomed, and the New York Times just had a story saying the same exact thing you just mentioned, Mary Catherine, which is that he is quote more receptive to listening to other arguments. This is not to say, however, that he is convinced, because after last night's stories about Biden, Andrew Bates, the White House spokesman, he issued a statement and he said, quote, "The president told both leaders he is the nominee of the party, he plans to win, and looks forward to working with both of them to pass his 100 days agenda to help working families."
Yeah, to which, by the way, all these reports of receptivity, allegedly, I say, is he receptive, or are you guys leaking that he's receptive to make him receptive? Because that sounds like what's going on.
I'm being quite honest here. If I were Biden, I would stick it out. This is humiliating at this point. What are you supposed to say? Well, enough people showed me numbers that I'm losing, and so I'm not going to run. Is that how it works after a primary is done and after 14 million votes are cast?
He doesn't believe them. He doesn't believe them. When presented with numbers by Pelosi, he pushes back, telling Pelosi, this is CNN reporting, he has seen polls that indicate he can win. Another one of the sources described Biden as getting defensive about the polls, and that, like you said, she invited Donilon to bring more data to the table, but I think he's pretty impervious to that data.
Yeah.
Also, if you look at the polls nationally, you can easly say that he is in striking distance.
Yeah.
Easily. And that hasn't really changed.
No, I was just going to say, I just find it so amazing that they can be like, well, he looks like he's going to lose. Let's just switch him out and put somebody else in. And Bakari Sellers, who is very close to the Vice President Kamala Harris, he had issued a statement as well and said basically to the effect, and I think that, I'm not sure if this was on X, but he was like, if you think that you're just going to not give it to Kamala Harris, you're going to have problems. And I'm paraphrasing here, but I think what Bakari Sellers wanted to say is basically think very carefully before you press that button, or before you go through that door. As Sean Connery says yet again, another comparison to the movie The Untouchables, Mary Catherine, before they break down the door, he says, are you sure? Because once you go through, there's no going back.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I can't imagine in their mind they think that there's some better alternative out there right now.
Well, the problem that they face, again, is that they didn't coalesce on this 2.5-3 weeks ago. This is like, and I think I said it on the podcast yesterday, this is like canceling a wedding after the invitations have already gone out, right? It gets harder every day to claw this back. And I would extend my metaphor to say, technically a simile, I would extend it to say,
I appreciate that distinction.
That this is not just canceling a wedding a month and a half before the wedding. This is canceling the wedding and speed dating to find a new fiance before the wedding. Like that is a very tall order. And although this is the problem, on one hand, you have national polls where he can go, look, I'm a couple points behind. This is doable. That's not incorrect. But if you look at swing state polls, Emerson today releasing Arizona, Trump +7, Georgia, Trump +6, Michigan, Trump +3, Nevada, Trump +5, North Carolina, Trump +7, Pennsylvania, Trump +5, Wisconsin, Trump +5. So that's pretty devastating.
Right.
However, he's got to make the decision. That's always been the case.
Yeah.
Oh, and I did want to add one more point to his bad behavior, particularly on the military vet front. There's a report about him getting nasty on a Zoom meeting with Representative Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado, an Army Ranger, served 3 tours in the Middle East. And he yells at him about foreign policy because Crow tells him, look, this isn't getting through to my voters. Mm-hmm. He says, this is Biden to him. First of all, I think you're dead wrong on national security. You saw what happened recently in terms of the meeting we had with NATO. I put NATO together. Name me a foreign leader who thinks I'm not the most effective leader in the world on foreign policy. Tell me who the hell that is.
How about Xi Jinping?
Then he says, tell me something you've never done with your bronze star like my son.
Oh, no, he did not say that.
Yeah.
Are we sure? Oh, my goodness.
Oh, this is reported many places at this point.
Yeah. Wow.
So you may take it with a grain of salt, but it seems it's in many, many outlets at this point.
Again, can we remind? We just have to remind. Yeah.
Yeah, Crow reportedly remained calm, saying it's not breaking through, Mr. President. To our voters, he yells at him again. You ought to talk about it.
It's worth reminding Americans that this idea that Joe is just this nice old folksy guy. So he was mean before he had these issues.
Yes,
and the meanness has come out.
Truly was. And one of the greatest rebrandings of all time was Goofy Uncle Joe.
Yeah, good old Joe, spinning those yarns, and everybody laughed
Mhm.
about it when he was just because remember, he was making up stories when he was very well. That's how he got out of the presidential race in the first place, from
Yes.
cribbing from Neil Kinnock. I mean, it's insane. So I also, by the way, I love these statements and the qualifiers from Democrats who want Joe Biden to step down, because there's at least one or two paragraphs. As an editor, I noticed this. There's always one or two paragraphs. It's just all praise. The amazing thing about Joe Biden, the things he's done for this country, right?
Yeah.
And then what comes next? My two favorite words, or one word, is either "that said" or "however," and then it goes right into it. And it just
To be sure of
to be sure. That's another three favorite words. To be sure. Again, I've mentioned this before. It reminds me of my old college buddy Jose, who right before he brought down the hammer on somebody, he would say, "She's nice and all, but," and I'm like, "Here we go,
All
it's going to
right.
happen."
So because we're recording now,
Yeah.
surely the president will drop out of the race within an hour or so.
They say these 48 hours are going to be big, and
I gotta
would you put
say,
it past him? Would you put it past him to, I don't know, decide that he's not going to run while Trump is talking, and then you'll have a split screen?
honestly, look, that would I don't put it past the party. I put it past Joe Biden because I'm not sure he's capable of making good strategic decisions, but it would be a devastating blow to announce this mega news as Trump is like almost getting to the stage.
Right.
You could also do it right after his speech to take the wind out of the sort of
Yes.
bump that Republicans hope to get out of
Brace
this.
yourself for Friday.
Yeah. Friday news dump.
Yeah.
They could do a Friday night news dump.
Mary Catherine, I do think that the switcheroo that the Dems are trying to pull just before the certification, not the certification, but the roll call, the virtual roll call, which is about 2 weeks away now, beginning.
Mhm.
I think in their minds, they've got this sewed up. They can win this race because most American voters are anyone but Trump, right? I mean, like if you gave us
Right.
some other alternative, I should say not anyone but Trump, anyone but Biden, we'll vote for that person over Trump. I think they really think that, and whoever they throw up is going to then change the dynamics of the race. And I know that political parties can change rules all the time. I get it, but I still don't see how this can convince a lot of Americans. Oh, okay, after what just happened, yeah, I'll vote for the other person. I'll vote for.
Well, one of the things found in polling that I can't remember which poll it was, but that's pretty devastating for Democrats. They're really in a bind here because if he stays in the race, which is probably either him staying in the race or resigning and immediately handing it to Kamala, which is what I think he should have done from day one.
Yeah.
But him staying in the race is arguably more stable as a political equation.
Yeah.
But while he's in the race, every time Democrats vouch for his presence of mind and strength, they are getting dinged for lying to the American people.
Because that's how it's going to come off, right? As
Everyone's
lying.
losing trust in them for vouching for him. So that's very bad for the party's brand. If they manage to do a switcheroo of some kind, you have a lot of problems. You have the fight they're going to have over who it is, the logistics of how it's done, the insanity of Chicago amped up even more. You have fracturing of donors and outside groups and get out the vote people and all of their folks. However, if they manage it, it is a tougher road for a Trump Vance ticket.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, and
Yeah.
also whoever this new person is has to be introduced and vetted, right? And that's going to happen in real time because getting to that giant stage is a new level.
Yeah.
But I do think that if they manage a replacement in some sort of manner, that it gets more challenging for Trump. And we will see what kind of Trump we get tonight, because I think that could do a lot to solidify the dynamics of this race. If he comes out with a good, semi-normal, funny at times, touching at times, and even maybe like a little bit of
Emotion.
a little bit of changed man Trump. I mean, he does seem different this week.
Yeah, that's right. And I know some people on the other side are rolling their eyes about this whole thing and about, his near-death experience. And we hear it a lot, obviously, in the convention where they talk about divine intervention, which is unfair, obviously, for, victims because
Right.
it's not like you're picking sides. It's much more theologically complicated than that.
That reminds
Uh,
me, by the way, that there was also a chant in the room for Corey, which
oh
was
yeah,
beautiful
that's
at
right.
one point
That's
last
right.
night.
That's right. But I mean, this is I'll leave you with two notes. One is for Trump, he got the pass, and it's still up to him. If you believe in if you believe in free will, the choice is his. If he decides to be a new man, or if he's going to go back to his old ways, that's his choice. And the second thing, I always, when you try to make sense of these things, and it's often hard, I think of my other hero, Bono. It was, he said, what do you pray for with your family? He says, I'm always trying to pray to understand the will of God, because that's, it's a mystery. And, but that's it.
All right.
That's
So
all I got for you.
it's been a big week around here.
What a
Okay,
big
so
week.
we will see what happens.
Got it.
A programming note. I
Yes.
am on Gutfeld extremely late tonight. And I have to fly extremely early tomorrow morning. So we're going to attempt to give you something tomorrow. We're just not sure what it is yet.
What time? Yeah.
So you may get 2 a.m. completely delirious Vic and MK, or you may get 6:30 in the morning in the car on the way to my airport MK. I don't know.
I'm telling you right now, my vote is for 6:30. Okay, that wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube or Instagram. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media podcast.